We just finished the 2023 F-Class Nationals down in Phoenix. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of good, some bad, and a little bit of in between. So let's get to it. Here we go. Going into the Nationals this year, I'll be honest, I wasn't feeling really good. I was struggling to get a really tight barrel going. I had some good barrels, but I don't know, just for whatever reason, wasn't having good luck getting just what, we would probably call like a hammer barrel, really in there. And so a buddy of mine, David, had a blank left. I was out of blanks because I was waiting to pick up a bunch of blanks at Nationals. So I was kind of working off the barrel stock that I had. My buddy David had some extra blanks. He said, hey, I'll just give you a blank now. You can give me a blank later. So I literally chambered up a brand new barrel, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before Nationals, did some very quick load development on it. You've seen a couple of those videos where I was doing like some bullet testing, some depth testing, stuff like that at 300 yards, doing my best to kind of get this barrel dialed in as fast as I could. And I was feeling pretty good about it, but it had never shot at 1,000 yards. So I had literally no data to work off of. In fact, I think this barrel only shot at 100, 300, and I ended up shooting one match at 600 yards before it went to Nationals, which is a little scary because you always like to kind of know what it's going to look like at 1,000 yards. But to be honest, it was the best barrel I had. It was shooting really nice one-hole groups at 300 yards, so I felt like, or at least close to one-hole groups. And I thought, well, this is my best chance. So I took one gun with that barrel down to Nationals, and it was a rough start. I'm going to show you right here. Well, let me just tell you what happened at practice. So I got in Friday night. I had booked some time at the 200-yard range at Ben Avery for Saturday morning, and just wanted to do a quick tuner test, take some chrono readings, kind of see what was happening. And I get there, and I had, it takes a little while to set up. And the way they run it is they do about 15 minutes of shooting, and then they call a ceasefire, and everybody goes out, and there's, 50 or 60 lines. So there's everybody from pistol people shooting at 10 feet to 200 yards. And it's busy, and all different kinds of guns, and it takes a while. So that you shoot for about 15 minutes, they call ceasefire, and then you get about 10 minutes to go, pull your targets, do whatever you need to do. So it's a very on and off process. Well, at the first 15-minute relay, I get set up, and I get literally 3 shots. By the time I'm done setting up, I get 3 shots off at 200 yards. I load my 4th round, and they're really strict there. Ceasefire, empty all guns. You can't blow off another round. So I pulled my rounds. Well, I had been doing a little bit of a seating depth test, and I was a little bit jammed into the lands. And without thinking, I probably could have said, hey, let me fire this round. It's in the chamber. I need to get it out. But, I was kind of trying to adhere to their rules, and I pulled the round real quick and ended up pulling the bullet out, spilling powder everywhere. And if you've done that, you know that it's not fun. And I don't do it very often, but apparently this was one of those times where I did it. So I did my best to blow it out. I have a small little cleaning rod with a brush on the end. I put some patches in there, tried to clean everything out, got the bolt going. Everything felt like it was working really well, or at least as well as it could be. And I didn't feel anything gritty in there, at least nothing that would really give me any pause. And again, it was the best I could do with the tools I had. So I started shooting, and at 200 yards, I literally couldn't get anything to touch. I'm shooting, 3-4 inch groups. It was embarrassing, maybe a 2-inch group at best on a couple shots. And I was really struggling, and I was just thinking, man, is this how my week's going to go? So I did a little more seating depth test and did a little tuner test. Ultimately I was shooting pretty much like what I had been testing up here, but I just couldn't get anything to work. So my seating depth was kind of my first thing. And then I thought, well, okay, I'll go back to my seating depth that I was shooting really well. I'll see if the tuner helps, because sometimes I can, make some moves and get that worked out. Ultimately, at 100 yards, I was finally getting 3 to touch, but not with a lot of confidence. But I only had so much practice ammo, and I told myself, well, I'll go home, clean the gun, get it really clean, because I didn't have all my tools with me at the range. And I'll get back home, and I'll just see what happens at mid-range. Ultimately, if mid-range turns into a a practice thing for me, then that's fine. You know, I really wanted to compete at mid-range. Not everybody does, but you know, I really wanted to compete at mid-range and be competitive. So I just said, I'm going to go home and do what I can. Well, I get home, clean out the gun, and I have a, I don't have it in front of me, but Vortec makes a 2-lug rubber wiper that you put patches over, and it really gets into the lugs and cleans it out. And I take that with me, and I 100% swear by that tool. It's one of the oldest tools I have, and I'll probably never get rid of it. But it squeegees, like really presses into the lugs and gets it clean. Well, turns out after maybe 5 or 6 patches on that squeegee, I had pulled out easily 20 or 30 kernels of powder that I couldn't get out with my other tools, that didn't blow out. They were in there. And then I put a borescope in, and I could actually see where it looked like a couple of those kernels had actually ignited. And so all of that to say that it's no reason I couldn't get anything to shoot well at the range. Like all those little things, they seem minor, but they really do add up when it comes to really getting it tight. But I'm going to show you the chronograph here, and you will see that, you know, my ammo was great. Like 49 shots with an SD of 6 is phenomenal. Like, I mean, you can't say that ammo isn't shooting well. And so I knew, you know, when I got home and kind of looked at the data and, you know, looked at the groups that I had, I said, okay, I'm going to put some faith in the fact that I know I had my gun tuned. I know the ammo's shooting well. I'm just going to go out and shoot mid-range. So let's jump into what mid-range looked like. I'm going to show you my scorecards. I have a few videos of what some of the relays looked like. And I'm just going to tell you, it was 3 days of pretty rough shooting. We had a lot of wind, better and worse, you know, obviously on certain days and matches. But it was a very, very challenging mid-range. So let's get into that, and here we go. Well, here we go into the first match of mid-range. Now, there are 9 matches, 3 each day for 3 days for a total of 9. And, you know, mid-range typically in the past is decided, I mean, maybe 1 point, 2 points dropped, 3 points dropped over the course of 9 matches. It's not hard under pretty decent conditions to have the top 5 winners, you know, drop 5 points or less. And you know, that's not to say that mid-range is easy. It's just to say that, you know, there's a lot of people that shoot well at mid-range and bring really good guns. And under, again, normal conditions, it's not hard to shoot cleans, you know, on a regular basis. So I think everybody kind of had the same idea, like, hey, you know, this is, you know, mid-range is going to be challenging. And I don't have any video of the first morning. I honestly forgot, but I will say that by the time we got to the range, it was blowing. I mean, there was a definite, you know, it was not a true headwind, but it was kind of a, you know, a quartering headwind. And there was no full value from the side or anything. I mean, it was blowing at us, and it was blowing pretty darn good. I mean, at least 10 miles an hour with much bigger gusts. And I think when everybody showed up, it was sort of a, you know, oh crap, what are we in for here? You know, the targets at Ben Avery are on a cantilever style target frame. They will blow down pretty easily. There's a lot of downward force, so the target pullers have to be really vigilant about holding the targets up. And at any given time, you know, if you're not holding the targets up, the targets can actually bounce around. So it is a group effort. You want to pull targets the way you want to shoot targets. So everybody works very hard to provide great target service. And, you know, I was fortunate, again, that I had people who, you know, were very good with their target service and keeping the target up when it was blowing. But I'm not going to lie, this was a very rough start to the mid-range, because, you know, I got up from this. We were on relay 3, I believe. So TR had already shot before us. We were in the pits pulling for them. We saw how brutal it was. We got up to the line. It, you know, it might have calmed down just a hair by the time we got out of the pits. But to go down, and you can see my sighters, like 9, 8, 8, 6, 10. Like, I mean, they were all over the place. It was switchy. It was hard to get a read on a direction. There's obviously no mirage once you're at that velocity of wind. So you're trying to find flags that are telling you something. And I just got to a point where I was like, okay, I shot a 9, 10, 10. You can see a little 10 is circled there. But, you know, once I had those 2 10s, I was like, well, you know, I'm 10 or 11, 12 sighters in. I've got to do something here. So I just went for it. I felt at least as comfortable as I could. and it just fell apart. I shot a 10 off the bat and thought, oh, okay, great. And then instantly threw an 8 out to the side. I do know that that next 9 was a correction. It obviously wasn't enough, but I made a correction, came into a 9, and then I just stopped. And I just, I stopped for a minute and waited, and it just wasn't getting any better. Like, you want to say, oh, I'm going to wait for a condition, but it was a very tough relay to try to say, well, I'm going to wait for a condition in. So I jumped back in and then went 9-8 again. So I had this horrible, instantly 6 points down in the first 5 shots. And, I'm not going to lie, it's hard. It's not how anybody wants to start a match, much less a national match. And, you're shooting against the best in the nation, not to mention some international competition that are phenomenal. And, there's, countless other national champions shooting against you. And it's really hard because you don't know how everybody's shooting. It's hard to drop those points and to think, well, I got 15 more of those. How much worse can this get? But I tried to settle myself. I want to say that I learned a little bit of something dropping all those points. It probably wasn't a lot, but at least it was enough to say, shut up, idiot. Just shoot your game, do your best, and that's all you can do. So I jumped back in and shot a 10, and then the X, and you can see I kind of moved on. Now, there were a couple 9s along the way, but the back 15, I felt really, really good about. I had learned kind of what the condition was doing. I clearly did not have a read on it on those first 5 shots. But by the end of those 5 shots, I obviously had felt a lot better that I was able to pull it out, only dropping another 4 for a total of 10. However, it's really hard to come off your gun dropping 10 points at a mid-range event and not feel like it's the end of the world. And, I talk about trying to work on my mental game. I try to work about staying positive and all that kind of stuff. But this felt like a lot. Now, I did get up, talked to a couple guys that were shooting next to me who's, were like, oh my gosh, John, you shot really well. And I'm thinking, well, I dropped 10 points, but the reality is there were people dropping double that on this relay. And, so you kind of start putting it in perspective, right? Now, I told myself I was going to try to focus less on scores. I was just going to focus on the shooting. It's easier said than done. I would love to tell everybody that it's a perfect system for me. Eric has been, very vocal about the fact that you can't worry about scores. All you can worry about is what you do. And I feel like I've come a long way, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't still look at scores, once in a while. And this is one where I did. I looked at the scores and honestly, it helped on this one time because at the end of this match, I saw that I really wasn't that bad. I mean, it was, I was up near the top with 10 down, which is a really weird feeling. And not that I was close to the top, but, I think I was in like the top 10 or something, if I remember right. At least the top 20, but I think I was higher than that, if I remember right. And so I sat there going, well, okay, then we're done with this. We're done worrying about the scores. All I can do is go shoot. So let's head to the next scorecard for match 2. Here goes match 2. And, again, I kind of told myself, let's just put the other one behind me. I was in 7th place. I took a quick look and saw that I was actually in 7th place. So, yeah, like I said, I was in the top 10 after dropping 10 points. So you do that and you go, well, shoot, like that's not looking too bad. And again, I just told myself, okay, I'm done looking at scores. Let's just shoot this out for the day and see how it lands me. So I settled back down, and I was really feeling comfortable. That last match with the kind of weird quartering headwinds, for whatever reason, all I can tell you is that it was just working for me. I was seeing whatever I needed to see. There were certain flags I felt were being really, let's call it honest or, true to what was showing up on target. So I was getting really good feedback, and I jumped into this one. I went 8-sider one, then went X for my second sider, and these, you only get 2 siders, so it's a little scary, especially in rough conditions. But I was so happy after this. I got up, thought, okay, this is great. 13 X's and 199. like that's a great way to follow up what just happened on the first match. And, you know, I was thrilled. Like, I mean, honestly, I just got up and I was really happy. And I said, okay, this shows that I can put it behind me. I can put what I thought was a bad match behind me, and I can just shoot my game. And I started shooting offensively. I have a tendency to shoot very defensively. You know, oh, I can't drop any more points. I can't afford to do this. I can't afford to do that. And I really tried to tell myself, none of that matters. You know, like, I'm just going to do it. Like, it's not a matter of, well, I can afford to drop a point or two. It's just, well, I'm going to shoot a clean. And if I don't shoot a clean, then okay, I didn't shoot a clean, but I know I can shoot cleans at 200. And so that's what I needed to do. So to walk away with a 199.13, I felt really, really happy. It was now our turn to go to the pits and pull for about 2 hours for the next relays to do their doubles. And then we were going to come out of the pits and shoot at the end of the day. So let's jump to that one. Again, really, you know, tough conditions. I can't even begin to tell you how I jumped in with a 5 on that cider. I don't know what happened. All I know is something was blowing much worse than I expected. And, you know, again, I was fortunate that I was able to take a look, get a read, you know, hit an X on my second cider. And then, of course, 9-1 on, which, you know, everybody hates that. But I'm getting better at shaking that off and dropped another couple points over the whole thing and walked away feeling, honestly, pretty lucky. It was not an easy relay. There were definitely a lot of points lost along the way for other people. And 3 felt really, really good. And, you know, at the end of that, you know, I was sitting really good. Like, I shot great. You know, I dropped 10, then 1, then 3. I was down 14 points, and I didn't even know it until we got to the awards ceremony because I wasn't looking at the scores. But I ended up winning the day, and I have a little bit of footage from that. But, you know, to shoot a 586, you know, 14 points on one day, knowing there's 2 more days to go, and the top shooter is already down 14 points, you know it's going to be a bumpy mid-range. And I did get really fortunate. You know, Johnny Ingram, who is just an amazing competitor, was right on my heels. We tied on score for the day, but I did out-X him by 4 X's. So, you know, we always say X's don't matter, but they don't matter until they do. So in this case, I was very happy to have the extra 4 X's. But Johnny's no slouch. I mean, a lot of these guys are no slouches, but Johnny was right there on my heels. And, you know, to win by a couple X's on the day felt phenomenal. So let's take a look at just a little bit of the awards ceremony that day.
All right, this is for all F-Class John's fans today. As we all know, John is not, he's real humble. He's not going to brag on himself, but today John did something awesome. And he won day 1 of the mid-range national F-Class aggregate in the F Open category. So I appreciate it.
Coming from a national champion yourself.
No, it's me doing the interview. So John, so tell us about what you saw today in match 1, match 2, and match 3. Best you can tell from the conditions.
Match 1 was just a cluster. I mean, everything was blowing everywhere, and I just did my best to hold on. I mean, like, I wish I had some. I wish I had some words of wisdom for perfect.
How about match 2?
Match 2, I actually I stole some hubcaps off of Dickerman.
Okay.
And he stole some off me, but on that one, I saw him and he was kind of working back and forth and just looked really kind of unsure. So he was almost done before I started, and it really died down. And I said, all right, let's just run. And I just ran it out. So,
match 3.
I sucked it. I dropped 3. I rushed it. I was nervous, and I made some bad calls.
Awesome. 2 more days of shooting. Congrats.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man.
99 and 13X, John Masick.
Awesome job. Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Well done.
Very good.
We are in for a mean one today, folks. This is day 2 mid-range, and it is so good out here. Just absolutely love it. If we thought yesterday was bad, this is going to be a whole lot worse. Well, you saw the you saw the wind, you saw what it was doing, and I will tell you, I was thrilled to walk away from that with 6 down. And I say that in retrospect. You know, I probably didn't feel quite that happy when I got up, but I do know that I thought, well, 6 can't be that bad. If 10 was okay the day before and I shot this the best I could, then 6 probably has to be at least decent. It turns out there were actually some people that shot some pretty great scores on this, and 6 wasn't quite as good as, as I probably had thought. But it was still a very, very good score for me and kept me feeling like I was where I needed to be. In fact, I think the top score was 197, which in that wind was pretty phenomenal. A guy named Pat Wood, he's a great shooter and really had a good relay on there. And, I think I was 6th or 7th here on this particular match looking back at it. So not great, but again, all you have to do is be consistently near the top to put yourself in a position to win. And that's what I kept telling myself. Like, sure, I'm dropping points, but I'm doing okay. You can see my sighters were really rough. Lots of 8s in there, like an 8, and then an X, 9, 10, 9, 8, X. And again, you just kind of got to say, well, have I learned as much as I can with the sighters? What do I have left? I had a very limited amount of sighters per match. I couldn't go past 10 after this because I was going to run out of ammo. And I used that last sighter the best I could and then jumped in with that 10. Now, I had some bad shots. I definitely, don't love seeing that snowman on shot 10 there. But again, walked away from it saying I did the best I could. I don't know that I really could have learned any more on this one. I think I shot it the best I could. I clearly missed a switch after shot 9 because it was well, I don't even know that it was a switch. I think it was just a really bad pickup or let off. I don't remember which it was, but I obviously didn't correct enough on shot 11 and then kind of picked it back up. But it was tough shooting. I mean, it was very windy and it was moving a lot, and stuff happens out there. So that was the end of Relay 1. It was tough. So I think at this point, if I remember right, we had to go to the pits and we were pulling the first set of doubles, and then we came out to shoot our last 2. So let's go to that. Look who it is, the amazing Seb. Seb, thanks for all you do with your rests and for everything you make. There's match 2, and or the second match of the second day. They're actually different match numbers, but for the sake of the video, it's just easier to say it's match 2 of the day. And not super great. The 2 sighters were tough. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I was having trouble getting centered up. And then, was fortunate to go X1 on. Did drop 4 points. It didn't feel great. They were kind of scattered. I couldn't really tell you why because they were mixed between X's and stuff if you look. And it was just obviously bad calls, and I was missing something. And it was probably quartering harder than I thought. So, for instance, if I'm holding at a point where it's hitting center and then the flag comes towards me more and I take that same hold thinking it hasn't changed, then the shot's going to go off to the right because it's letting up on the wind because of the quartering. Or as another example, if I'm making a hold, let's say I'm holding 1 ring right and it's going to the X, and then the angle changes more towards a full value left, then I need to hold out more or else it's going to go downwind 9. So I don't have any markers on these, and I don't remember which were which, but suffice to say I obviously missed some calls. A good X count. I mean, I was really happy with the 13, but the 4 did not feel, well, quite as wonderful as I wanted it to. I wasn't really paying attention again to the scores at the time, but I can tell you, looking at the scores now, on this particular match, I dropped all the way to like number 15 on this one match. There were several cleans, a lot of 199s, 98s. So dropping 4 really wasn't helping my cause. I didn't know that at the time, and to be honest, I didn't care as much at the time. I was just going to shoot and see what happened. But it definitely was not my best relay, just obviously off a little bit. I do have the target for this one as well, so let's take a quick look at that target. This is the second match target that I was just talking about. So you saw my score. Here's what it looked like on target, and you can definitely see it was much better. My gun tightened up a little bit. You know, everything was centered up really well. Like, this is the kind of target you want to see. Like, was the score exactly what I wanted? No, but it definitely shot the way I would want it to, in terms of keeping its water line, you know, keeping a minimal horizontal if possible, and trying to control the wind calls. So overall, not a bad target. It was good to see that it was at least working. Now, I didn't see these targets till the end of the day, so I wasn't really sure what it looked like. But you know, once I got them, I think it was pretty helpful to at least know what was happening during the day, even though I didn't have this kind of feedback during the day. Last match of the second day, and this one didn't go so bad. Like, looking back at it, it was still like I don't know, I think I was 13th or 14th down. There was you know, 4 cleans, a bunch of 199s, you know, and then I think I had the high 190. No, I didn't even have the high 198. Anyway, it was you know, it's one of those ones where you look back and go, well, you know, clearly a lot of people saw what you didn't. A couple of mistakes were made. I was still happy with the 198.11. But we're 6 matches in, and I didn't know where I stood at this point. I knew that I did not perform well on the day. I knew that I was having just a little bit of trouble, but in the general sense, I felt like I was doing pretty good. And here's how I kind of looked at it. I kind of looked at it and said, well, I remember when Eric won Southwest Nationals earlier this year, and if I remember right, you know, we shot for 3 days, and I don't think he won a single match. Like, maybe he won one, but I don't remember him winning one. But I mean, literally, he just did really well each day, was really consistent. He may not have been the top performer every time or any of the times, but consistency is what wins this game. And so I just try to tell myself, you know what? I'm still up there on every match. On every match, I'm up near the top of the board, and that's all that I needed to do. So at the end of as a second day aggregate, I was in 6th place, but that's just for Tuesday. But when you took the Tuesday scores and the Monday score, I was actually in 2nd place overall behind Johnny Ingram. And I think Johnny Ingram had me by 3 points at this point, which in mid-range at this juncture seemed like a lot of points. But let me show you this target real quick, and then I'll kind of talk about kind of what happened before the 3rd day here. Here's that final target. So this is that 198.11, I think it was. And you can see it was pretty tight. It was centered up, which is always one of my goals, right? One of my goals is always to make sure that it's not too high, not too low. Ideally, you want to get the vertical, you know, left to right, centered up as well, which, you know, in the general sense I did, but obviously missed a couple calls, went out with the 9s. So it's a good target. It looked good. Again, I didn't have the benefit of seeing these targets until the end of the day. And, you know, but it was good to reflect on them and look at them and see what was going on. And I think that sort of goes into what I'm going to talk about here with day 3 coming up. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie. I had seen the scores. I thought I might have been able to catch a medal on something during the day. Was trying to see where I was, and I did see the final standings. Like I said, I knew I was 3 points behind, or 2 points, 3 points? 3 points behind Johnny Ingram going into the final day. And he was shooting phenomenal. Like, he was shooting really, really good. And you know, he's no slouch, and he's won his fair share of stuff. So I knew I had my work cut out for me. And then the people behind me were shooting really well. Again, I'd like to say that I had completely put the scores out of my mind. I did my best. But here's what I told myself. That's fine. That's where the scores are. I can't do anything about it. And, you know, Eric always tells me, like, you got to shoot your game and then see what happens. So I went to bed that night, and, you know, I tried to do some positive thinking and some mental imagery and some things like that. And as I was laying in bed, you know, I thought, you know, I shoot 600 yards over 60 times a year. I shoot countless cleans at 600 yards. There's no reason I can't do this. You know, conditions or not, it's like me to shoot cleans at 600. And all I told myself is all I have to do is shoot 3 cleans. Just go out there tomorrow, shoot a clean, shoot a clean, shoot a clean. And it doesn't mean I'm going to win. It just means I've done everything I can to help me win. And then it's up to how everybody else did. And that's not an easy thing for me to do. And again, I've said this before, I would like to tell you this was really easy for me. It's not. This is not how my brain works. I'm really trying to focus on this, but I'm really trying to take the attitude that I just need to shoot and not worry about everybody else. So I got up the next morning. Conditions were a little better. I mean, of the 3 days, it was definitely the better, but it was still tricky. But it's like one of those ones where you kind of go out there and you think, oh, man, like this is good enough that there's going to be people cleaning any one of these matches, and any of the people above or below me are capable of shooting clean in these conditions. And you know, that's it's a hard place to be in sometimes when you see those conditions and you think, well, all I can do is do what I'm meant to do. So I went out. I was paired up with this really cool guy, Larry, who was just having the best time ever. And I just laid down, and this is what happened. Coming out of the pits, I laid down, took a bunch of ciders, and you can see my ciders were okay, but they weren't great. But I waited a long time on this one. I think I sat on my gun for 7 or 8 minutes before I took a shot. And at this point, I had a pretty good idea of what I was kind of looking for. I had been watching the wind, watching the flags, and I honestly felt really confident going into this one as long as I was patient. And, I waited, and we only have 22 minutes with mid-range. It's not like long range where you have half an hour. And so I was waiting, almost half the time, 7-8 minutes, something like that, or a third of the time. And anyway, conditions started coming. I started taking my ciders, and I ran this one pretty quickly. The condition was staying around. There wasn't a lot of movement, and I knew that just from watching, we have time to watch and look, and, people will spend time talking or doing this or that. And, I was really trying to stay focused. I got on my spotter and I just watched the flags, watched the wind, and I saw a condition that I liked. And while I can say in plenty of other relays that, it just didn't work out the way I wanted, this one, I saw what I thought was going to be a really good condition, very stable, and at the same time, not a very long condition. So I knew I had to shoot fast if I saw it. And I waited and I waited, and it came around. In fact, I believe on this one, almost everything was coming from the right with a little more velocity. It wasn't quite a switchy headwind like it was the other days. And then I knew at some point it was going to turn and start coming from the left, and the left just looked really stable. And, I can't tell you why. All I can tell you is that whatever I was seeing looked better to me. So when it came around, I took my ciders, I felt pretty good about it, and I jumped in. And I got to tell you, that was one of the best 213s. While very tough, emotionally and mentally, it was one of the best cleans I had ever shot at 600. And, it was one of those things that kind of reaffirmed. I sat there going, okay, I've shot a 220 at 600. I've shot 219, 17, 18, 16. Like, I've shot a lot of really high X count 200s. And then I told myself, you know what? It doesn't even have to be that high. I've shot 209, 206, 210. And I just kept replaying all of those targets in my head before I did this. And then it happened. And I shot the clean. And I went, wow, that really felt good. And so then we had a back-to-back relay on this one. So we came out of the pits, shot this, and then we had to shoot again. So let's take a look at that target. Same thing. I laid down on this one, had a chance to look at the conditions before we shot, really tried to pay attention to what was happening. And then Cider 1 was an 8, which, obviously I didn't see something that I thought I did. Pulled it into a 10 and then went for it. This one, again, all 3 of these relays, I'm just going to tell you, I waited and waited and waited. I was incredibly patient on all 3 of these relays. I just knew what I wanted to shoot in, and I knew that if I waited, it came around. And I can't remember if it was this one or the next one, but one of these I waited, I think, 12 minutes. One of them was like 12, 13, I don't know, something like that, before I started shooting. I think it was this one, but it really paid off. I was really patient. I didn't like what the other condition was doing, and I'm sitting there being patient, not shooting, and I'm watching the other scores and trying to kind of see, okay, am I doing the right thing by waiting? You're watching your flags, you're seeing what the other scores coming up, and there were a lot of people losing points in the first couple minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes of it. And that sort of reaffirmed that I just needed to wait. So I kind of put my head down for a minute. I leaned my head on my backrest and kind of put my head down. And then I picked it up after another minute or two. And it also stresses the importance of why we have timers on the line, because you really have to make sure you can manage your time properly. I knew I had good pit pullers, so I knew that if I needed to shoot fast, I could. I needed, and so I just waited. And then once I was in there, I just, my condition was holding up. I was seeing the pickup or let-offs, making good calls, and I shot another 213, which I thought was just crazy. Like, I got up and thought maybe I shot 5 or 6, because sometimes you kind of aren't really paying attention. You just know that you're shooting clean. You're coming in, going out, and I got up thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did this. Like, tough, not certainly not lay down by conditions by any means. It was a little bit of work. And on top of that, just mentally exhausting, because at this point I'm just sitting there thinking, like, okay, I told myself I was going to shoot 3 cleans today. I just shot 2 of the 3. I can do this, and I kept telling myself, it's like me. So it was tough. So we come out of this, we're done shooting our back-to-backs. It means we have to go to the pits for 2 hours. And, in my head, I thought, oh, this is going to be nice. I can settle down, get ready for the third string. And I made the mistake of talking to one of my friends who's, been in this position before. And I said, oh man, I'm so glad I get to go to the pits and just, kind of relax for a minute. And he goes, that's the worst for me. He goes, it's 2 hours of thinking about what you have to do, and don't let it get in your head. He goes, just don't worry about what people are saying in the pits. Don't worry about what other people shot. Don't ask about the scores. He goes, it's going to be a very long 2 hours. And you have to stay focused. So just think about what you did, think about what you need to do. And I'm really glad he told me that, because I think I could have let myself get out of hand in the pits. It's hard not to hear all the chatter and people talking about what happened, on the last 2 relays. And so we headed to the pits. We were there for 2 hours. Let's see what happened when I came out. Yeah, your eyes don't deceive you. I shot a third 213. And I was really consistent in my sighters, 8-1 on and then X1 on. I had a thing for shooting 8s on the first sighters, I guess. But, same thing. I sat on this one, all 3 relays. I sat a long time waiting for a condition. This one was somewhere in the 7 to 10 minute range before I started shooting. And I felt really, really good about that. Again, I was watching people dropping points. I was watching people ping pong shots left and right, meaning the condition was changing pretty quickly and they weren't keeping up with it. Like, a lot of things were telling me that my decision to just sit and wait was the best one I could make. Now, I'm not going to lie. As I was coming out of the pits, somebody made a comment to me about how many points the person ahead of me had dropped before we had gone to the pits. And I knew that if I shot a clean, I would be winning this. And I had somebody, my buddy Jason was 1 point behind me. Like, people were, I'll tell you what, when you're in the lead, people are all too eager, and I get it, like, I'm not upset about it, but like, people are all too eager to tell you how good you're doing. And they're all too eager to tell you how bad somebody else did. And it's it's just the way it is. And again, I don't fault people for it. I've done it. It's just part of the game. But I'm trying to stay focused and not focus on the score. And then, somebody's like, oh man, so-and-so dropped a ton of points and, you got this. All you got to do is, do this or that, and then someone else says, oh man, so-and-so shot really good. Jason's right there on your heels. And I knew it was not going to be a gimme. I was really trying not to shoot defensively. So to lay down and do this, and I got to tell you, like, I'm not going to lie, I came off this, you know, like even talking about it now, I'm getting emotional. But I was just bawling. It was an incredible feeling. I knew that I had won. I knew there was nobody that could catch me. I threw my chamber flag in. I was kind of down on the low end of the line. There was nobody else to the left of me, and I grabbed my phone and called my wife, and it was pretty amazing. So anyway, I can't explain to you all of the emotions that go into winning a national championship, but suffice to say, it was an amazing time, and it was an amazing day, and you know, to have people around me, like everybody was coming up and giving me hugs and shaking my hand, and you know, like all these people that I respect and that I look up to, and that, you know, some have been mentors, some have been people that I've just chased for years because they're so damn good, and you know, some are my best friends, other people are people I barely know, and they're all genuinely happy for you. Like, do they wish they had won? Of course they do. You know, do they wish they had shot better? We all do that. But as soon as somebody wins, it's amazing how our community comes together, and our community really embraces the winners, and they know what it took, and they know how hard it was, and they were there, and it's something that they can't ever take away from you. So this was an amazing event. So let's take a look at the awards banquet that was held the next day, and I'm also going to go through. So this was Tuesday afternoon. The mid-range team event was the next day, and then we were having the banquet the following night. So I think I've got a little bit of footage from team event, if I remember right, and some of the daily awards that were given out, and then we will show the banquet, which was pretty awesome, I'm not gonna lie. So, you know, to close out the day on a 600 with 39 X's, I felt like that just really solidified that it wasn't dumb luck. You know, like I really worked for this, and it felt great. So let's take a look at some other footage here.
And the F Open F-Class Mid-Range National Champion with a 1774 and 95X, John Mason.
Let's get those two.
Turn sideways.
There you go, Finn.
Suck him up. I feel David. Don't do that. I feel David's hands. Yeah, no bullshit.
There you go. All right, smile.
Suck it.
So John, good job, man.
Thanks, man.
Good job.
Couldn't have done it without you.
Good job.
So there you have it. There's the mid-range, all the events. It was just awesome. I just can't even explain the feeling. But you know, just it wasn't just winning. It's the people around you that are there to support you. Even the people that you beat. You know, it doesn't happen very often, but you know, to win something like this, it just means the world to me. And I appreciate everybody out there that watches me. I had a ton of people. You know, there were a couple competitors. There was this really cool guy, TJ. You know, he had met with me on practice day. He had messaged me and said, "Hey, can we talk for a little bit?" And we sat down and talked, and then I gave him some wind reading advice, and you know, he shot really well for his division on the mid-range, and he was just super, super grateful. A couple other people came up and said hi, and you know, it's what makes it all worth it. And I you know, I was a manager for a lot of years, and my goal was always to have people that became more successful than I did. If I could train somebody that took a position better than me, then great. I had a hand in that, and that's how I always look at this. So, you know, if I can help people along the way with this, if I can help somebody achieve what I was fortunate enough to achieve, then that's it. And let me also say, you can't do this without some luck. Like, I can tell you that I made good calls. I can tell you I made some bad calls. I had a gun that was shooting really well, but you just have to get lucky. And Eric's talked about this before in some of his videos where he says, you know, some days all of those liners are just inside, you know, you're just catching the 10s. He goes, there's other matches you go to where they're, you know, just leaking out and they're 9s. And you know what? This was just my 3 days. And I was catching the lines. It was just my couple days to get those slightly better calls. And, you know, that goes along with it. So, you know, you got to be prepared. You got to have the skill, and you got to get the luck. It does take all three. And, you know, I'm fortunate that's what happens. So I appreciate everybody watching. I'm going to be doing another video here on the long range events. And, you know, it was just a great Nationals. I'm not going to lie. You can watch the Nationals, the long range event, and it honestly didn't matter what happened there. You couldn't take anything away from me after this event. So anyway, you guys have a good one. We'll talk soon. Have a good one.